The Adventure Pro podcast is back. If you've enjoyed any of the episodes, please leave a review and subscribe, as this will help others find the podcast. You can do this in your preferred podcast player. And if you're feeling really kind, please share the podcast with friends, family, colleagues, and on your website or social media. Thanks in advance. Let's get to the episode. Welcome to the Adventure Pro podcast. Interviews, stories, and inspiration from amazing people that have made adventure their business. Today's guest on the podcast is Tom Smith. Tom, welcome to the podcast, and great name.
Thank you. Yeah, be a lot of Tom today, I think.
Tom.
Yeah.
Tom, you sent me an email a few days ago and I read it through. It's quite a lengthy email, and I love lengthy emails going into lots of detail. It was just full of stuff, full of experiences, and full of basically just living life to the full. And then at the end, it said, "You're 26 years old," and I nearly fell off my chair. It's quite remarkable. So what I would love to dig into on the podcast is obviously find out a little bit more about who is Tom, a little bit about your journey. If we start at the beginning and then we can sort of work through. So Tom, who are you, and have you managed to cram in so much into your life so far?
Yeah, it's just the ability to not sit still, I think, is the classic one, as you might see today. But yeah, so sorry, my name's Tom Smith. I'm born and bred North Wales. Gachy Siarad Cymraeg, so fluent Welsh speaker for those that are listening. But for the sake of sounding eloquent, I'll do this in English. Yeah, born and bred in North Wales. Grew up North Wales, and currently I'm an adventure medic, expedition medic, in and amongst all the other stuff that seems to slot in between all the various outdoor industry things.
Great. Adventure medic. So listeners are going to be thinking, that sounds exciting. What does that look like?
Yeah, so I mean, the popular term is expedition medic or team medic or stuff like that, but generally a first aider, if you will, attached to expeditions. So whether that's film crews going out to places, or whether it be UK or international, or providing film safety. So when you've got crews working on ropes, working on cliff edges, anything that requires sort of risk mitigation, really. My little speciality in it is the medical, as that's sort of the way I'm going. But I dabble in all sorts of things generally around safety for film crews and teams going to all sorts of places.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so what was your last gig? What were you doing?
Last gig was just before Christmas. I was working on a film. I think I can say what it is. It was a working title anyway, but it was a film called Dead Point up here in North Wales. It's based on a climbing film.
Right.
So I was one of the set medics for that. So I think there was about 150 person crew all in all. With various units and locations around North Wales. It was handy for me because I knew my way around, which is often the hardest part of working in those places. But yeah, on the local spot, so there was a rope safety crew who I worked with closely, different to me, but I was working in conjunction with them, and then on the medical team. Yeah.
So you were at school only a few years ago, it seems.
Yeah, it seems like it.
Yeah. And am I right in thinking you didn't get on with school too much?
I don't know if I not necessarily didn't get on well, because I actually enjoyed the idea of going to school and being with all the people was fantastic. You know, I was fortunate enough. I played rugby for the first 15 years of my life, really, from which I was very small. So I've always been blessed with 15 friends. So it was one of those, as we always had a great time. And I actually enjoyed learning. I think I was just very key on not learning the things I didn't like.
Yeah.
So it was one of those, is that so this, weirdly enough, I kick myself now, but the sciences never really stuck with me, even though biology is like my weakest. So anyone who does medical and ambulance work with me will tell you that, strangely enough. But it's sort of the thing I struggle most with. But in terms of stuff like history and obviously physical education and D&T, and then photography was also massive for me. but that was kind of all I particularly cared about. I never was really troublesome, I would say, but I was more like all the teachers sort of knew like he's gonna do a C, he's gonna get a C in this, and then he's gonna try harder in the things he likes.
Yeah.
Yeah, 70% of theory wise, but practically a lot more with it. Yeah.
And did you have any sit down sessions with any careers advisors at that stage? Can you remember that?
Yeah, I think it's one of those. It's sort of a running joke, especially with my friends and with me, and definitely my family as well, because they for a long time they were privy to me having those conversations, and everyone gets the down check every now and then. But as a young kid, I think because growing up rurally, I grew up working on farms, and I'd happily just do anything that would put my hands on something. So I had my first ever job was for a local company up here, very awesome neighbor of mine, doing mountain fencing, so building fences like up and over mountains and stuff like that.
Oh, great.
For farmers and stuff. So I sort of went in that a boy and came out a man, if you will. I came out all beaten up and things like that.
Yeah, bird hands.
Yeah, but my dad and mum are a massive inspiration on me. Like my dad was a police officer for 30 odd years and a very keen mountaineer. So he was sort of like the hard skills, get it done influence on me, if you will. My mum's always been a massive creative. So she used to plank me down when I was little in front of plays and stuff like that. And it was that sort of made me think about film and stuff like that. So growing up, I knew there was some sort of thread between the two, if you will. So my dad's always instilled an amazing work ethic in me, and it's something I perfected or try to perfect as you go through everything. So I've always been a bit more of a get it done sort of. I'm gonna get this done sort of person. So when growing up and going through careers, the classic line I used to get was like, because of your age, it's like it's difficult, and I sort of knew what difficult was, and from a young age, and I was just sort of, that to me didn't seem like a very good excuse. just that something's difficult, why does that then mean that you're not allowed to do it? So yeah, that's somewhat of a theme, I would say, that's carried on, is that if it's difficult, then that's usually the right sign that it's something you should be having a go at. Yeah.
Nice. That's a lovely outlook.
Yeah.
Not shying away from it. Yeah, and I'm guessing that work ethic, you working up in the mountains. Did you do the slate? Did you do slate fences, or was it wooden?
We definitely found some slate somewhere. It was one of those jobs where me and my brother, so it seemed really like a bit of a rite of passage where we live. A lot of the rugby team worked for that local farmer. He's a legend, and he's still there now. I owe a lot to him, actually. He's a really, really good guy. But it was like a rite of passage. My dad did bits for him, being a grown up at that stage, and then being neighbourly and things like that. But then my brother went and did work experience with him, I think, who was a bit older than me. And then I went and I did sort of a year, as I did like the half terms this summer and then the other half terms. Oh, it's just like brutal. It's just a bit like, really young. You just sort of like, there's your fence post and there's your mountain. I'll see you at 5 o'clock. And then you just, and you go, and then you sort of learn that learn everything about, like, you learn what it feels like to be really, really cold. Granted, I learned to be really, really cold later on in life, but I mean, like, really, really cold.
Like real cold. Yeah.
And you learn that, like, you're going to get knocks and scrapes, and when you do get knocks and scrapes, you have to actually learn to find that really funny, and not not just that day ending, this, because there is no going home, because the job isn't done. But through high school, I did various jobs like that. So later in high school, I became a tree surgeon. So I did my tickets when I was 17. I think that's the first when immediately you're legally allowed to do it. Because I was like, that seemed like a great job, because big machine in your hands and you smash the trees to bits. I thought that seemed, and it seemed to get decent money. So I did that, and then so it was always school as hard as you could, and then sort of work as hard as you could. I did various things. I was a lifeguard, beach lifeguard, and I worked at a few local outdoor centres doing the stuff in between.
Yeah.
I've
often, I love asking that question about the careers advice. I was always told you're going to join the army. That's all you're going to do.
Yeah.
I'm not academic, and I love being outside. Well, to go and join the army, and I went on work experience in the army. Hated every second of it. Got into a lot of trouble, and just came away going, I still don't know. And every single person, you know, I loved going on the outdoor centre trips for school. Every single person, oh, you can't make a career out of that. You can't make a job. And well, here I am, you know, a couple of decades later, and I've made a career out of it. So you've done various different things. So what happened after school then?
Yeah. So after school, I think kind of speaking to what we said earlier, I during school, very similar. I was also in army cadets when I was very young. Dad put me in there. And as I was saying, absolutely hated that last time. The idea of being away from home was like, it was like the worst thing you could ever do. Like I can remember, like there was one army camp.
You live in North Wales, Tom. I mean, you know,
I know.
In the world, so
it's true. But I didn't even leave North Wales. That was the funny part. I actually was there was a camp in Bethesda, and it was like a weekend away. And I can remember, this was like when I was in year 7 or something like that. It's like there's a camp in Bethesda, and it was a really cool camp. I think it was like a shooting camp we went on or something like that, weapons handling. And we went there, and I like literally, it was like the world was closing in, like the black bars are coming. I was like, oh my god, where am I? Who are all these people? And literally I had to get Dad to come and pick me up, and but I was more scared of Dad coming to pick me up than I was of being scared away from home, because I was like, oh my god, like what am I letting down here? But then literally through high school, just to tie back to your question, as soon as high school finished, I kind of went back around and realized like good grades tends to help you really when you go forward. So I did work hard, so I stayed on for sixth form, and me and my close friend went on a couple of ski trips it was for us with the school, again using all that hard-earned pocket money, and loved it. And again, it was seeing the mountains and how big they could be. It kind of flipped then. I loved being away then. So I realized, very similar to yourself, I was like, something between the two is great. But after, like, in the upper years of school, I had quite a big setback, really. So I've always sort of, you know, I'm no Achilles or anything, but I've always prided myself on being physically in shape, really, just to be in order to do all the things we talked about. And then when I was 18, in the last year of sixth form, I got septic peritonitis, really, really bad. Sort of seemingly overnight, but it was basically there was an event that happened within the family where I had to do first aid on myself, and my dad had to do first aid on someone in our family, all quite stressful. That ended well, but they reckon sort of during the stress of that, because if your those of you who don't know, septic peritonitis is your appendix bursts and then goes septic, basically. So you contract sepsis. So basically they reckon in that it doesn't take a lot, because sometimes it can be inflaming for ages and crack and so on. So they reckon in the stress of that it cracked. But that was on New Year's of 2018, 17, somewhere around there. So for 2 weeks I just had a stomachache. So I was like, being myself, I was sort of a bit like laughing at it, if you will. I sort of started going for casual 15-hour naps, and I was like, this is weird, and sort of going sort of the color of the wall behind me. So like, you know, around the doctors and the first sort of GP appointment, sort of thought I was bunged up, so they gave me a bunch of laxatives, which turns out making it even worse. And then another week later, what was really funny is my mum was like, well, you've been in for ages. Yeah, you know, nothing my mum or dad are particularly medically minded, but I don't hold that against them. But my mum was like, you need is fresh air. So we went out and we went up on this, just climbed the mountain. And I was like, this is really hard. My mum was like hundreds and hundreds of meters ahead of me, and I was sort of like dragging myself up this mountain. I got down, and then took another 15-hour nap, and I was like, right, something's not right. here, you know. And I was going to school and stuff like that. And my dear friend Meredith, he recalls it as like 1 minute I was in school and then I was gone for 6 months. So I basically went to my family doctor, or a more specific doctor, I guess you'd say, and they took one look at me and basically screened me positive for like septic shock, basically. So I'd had septic shock for 2 weeks or something like that.
Goodness me.
And I was about 4 hours out from knocking on the door, because they basically got me in, and I was still feeling, I was managing, if you will, but I did feel like I'd been hit by a bus. Having not been hit by a bus, but it's sort of that sort of everything's taken out of you. And I was just sat on the bed. They decided to keep me in, and mum and dad went home, and I was sort of sat there and I watched my own vitals like go from, you know, a decent blood pressure of like, you know, 124 over 86 or something, and just down and down. And then the last number I remember was like 70 over 30. And then I was out.
Wow.
And then I woke up with all the doctors drawing on you, because they, as they do, they plan the operation, and it was big lines, and I've got this big old scar now. But it was basically because I was 18, they brought in the big yellow form of, so if you don't do this, you're going to die. But if you, this is everything that could happen to you after. So it was like, you know, not be able to walk, or, you know, have a colostomy bag, or, you know, never be able to eat certain things again, or only be fed through straws and things like that, because of the location of where it was in your abdomen. And then at the bottom, it was like, hopefully save your life. So I had to tick this thing, and then go straight into, I think it was supposed to be, my mum and dad will probably correct me on this, but it was supposed to be a short 2-hour surgery. I think it ended up being closer to 4 to 6 to 7, somewhere in that long. And I did start, I apparently I absorb anesthetic like a madman. So I did start to wake up in the middle, apparently, while I was open. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah. So I had a massive setback. I went in and I was sort of kind of the shape I am now, I guess, probably a bit skinnier, but I was about what you call 90 kg, and I came out about 60, like I was soaking wet, like super. And I just, you know, had to learn to sort of, as the anesthetic wears off all your abdominals, and anyway, that's all pretty gruesome. But basically, I had to learn to function again, really. Luckily, no lasting effects. Maybe, don't know. Maybe I twitch a little bit every now and then. But so that happened, and I sort of, the physical bit for a good year was kind of like, so they were kind of like, look, you can do what you can, but you know, you've basically been cut open, so you've got that all has to bond and heal, as well as your digestive system has to get back to a point. And as a foodie, that was like a nightmare. No. But my first memory of waking up was I sort of woke up in the morphine days, as you do, and I heard this big old crunch to the left of me, and I sort of like was like that, and I looked, and my brother had his feet up, and he was watching the TV, and he was just eating this massive panini. And I still hold it against him to this day. So yeah, I basically, after school, I had this year off, if you will. Well, I towards the back end of it, I got back into the normal routine I was doing, as I was saying, of chainsawing and various little outdoor workshops, but the physical was gone. So like I couldn't do anything. So this is where like I sort of transitioned back into sort of creativity a bit. So I always loved photography and film, and when I left school for the year out, towards the tail end of my recovery, I put in to study film at Leeds, because at the time, as a 18-year-old, I was like, well, I'm now going to be an invalid for basically forever. Like I didn't know you could put back on weight, or you know, I'd never had to do that. So it was really hard, and so I had a lot of stuff. I was diagnosed with PTSD as well, and I, just because of stuff in the morphine dreams and how quick it was and the onset. And so all through that year, it was all very much like, it was sort of counselling, figuring out what to do, counselling, trying to get outside, counselling, figuring out what to do. And it was just a systematic year of that, super hard. And then, yes, I decided like photography, photography because I'd done it at A level, and I was like, this seems like a thing. So at college, I looked at that and loved it. Like, I loved the idea of just being able to capture things. And to start off with, it was what everyone learns. So it's like, you know, take a cool photo of your desk and then edit everything so it looks somewhat cool.
Yeah.
But my brother's a graphic designer, and my mum's she was an illustrator and an author. So I got massive shade from like good critics, if you will. They were like, that's terrible. so I was quickly like, right, okay, so like the basic photography is not going to cut it. So but I just love filming stuff. So like as I was recovering, I would like film a walk and edit into something or whatever. And when I was younger, I you know, we used to mountain board and mountain bike and do all the dangerous stuff. And I used to love filming that stuff just to show. We used to watch what we did again because it was so good, if you know what I mean. It was just used to film it, put it in iMovie, put a lame explosion on the thing, and then we'd watch it again. So like in this year of sort of rebuilding, if you will, I probably got into my photography. So when I did start getting out, I was like, right, I'm going to shoot photos of what I do. So then it was the climbing and stuff like that. But then 2020, so late 2019 and into 2020, I was in Leeds studying film and miserable. So I basically ended up going to Leeds after school, after a year out of sort of working and rebuilding, if you will. And in Leeds, I was away, which wasn't a big deal at the time. I was away, which was fine, but I was still really dealing with these massive. I was having anxiety attacks, and the first time I had one of those, I thought I was having a stroke. You know, I had no idea what it was.
Yeah.
All off the back of that operation. So I was just going through this weird cycle of take photos, go to class, work out in the gym, freak out basically, and then like, oh my god, like what's going on, and then sort of doing this cycle. And I just, after about COVID obviously hit, which didn't help, but it was towards the back, it was sort of early, seems ages ago now, doesn't it? But it was like 20, yeah, so sort of February time 2020. I was kind of done with that whole, I just couldn't be in a city. Great people, but I couldn't be there anymore. I was struggling too much upstairs, and I was kind of like, I was even more lost than when I was in hospital. I was just sort of like, there's no climbing, there's no, you know, even though there was, but I'm a bit of a trad dad, so I don't not a big gym climber guy, but there just wasn't, there was no substance to it. It was sort of, and I had great lecturers, and I did well as well. Like I really did well. Like the film stuff was great. Who doesn't love sitting and watching films all day? But it was, and it taught me the craft. Like it taught me all about the sets and people and everyone's job and the history of film and mise en scène and all these things that everyone talks about. It was a great base, but again, I just stepped off that outdoor track. It was just gone. It was sort of, it felt unobtainable, really.
Yeah.
And I ended up spending £400-500 coming back on the weekend to go ice climbing when the snow came in, because I was just like, I just need to get back. Like I need that fix. My closest friend Chris, who I've definitely got some stories with later on in life, but he called me once on a Friday. This is just before COVID hit, actually. He said like, there's snow, and I was like, oh great. And I was in a flat full of people, and I just we were about to go out on the town, and I was like, right. And I finished my beer, and I just threw all my kit in a bag and booked a train and went. And then over that weekend, I came all the way back. I think I got back at midnight, picked up by my friend, slept in until 10 or something, caught up with mum and dad. And then when the snow and ice was good that evening at 4, we ice climbed up Trevan. And we went up Trevan until 4 or 5 in the morning on some epic. It was amazing. But he bought the wrong type of crampon, so halfway up they came off. So that was a fantastic. Learn how to jerry rig duct tape and paracord for that one, but and then I came back down. Then got back down about 4:30, and then I was back on a train that lunchtime back to Leeds. So the same people are only just coming out of the hangover, you know. So I was just like, okay, well, very clearly, the world needs me to be, something needs me to be back there. And then that's when I made the big change to to study adventure filmmaking in South Wales. Yeah.
Amazing. Wow. Well, thanks so much for sharing that, and also sharing the vulnerable bits. I think it's very easy to say it's all sunshine and rainbows, but the
There's a
more I
lot as
speak,
well. I just realised I've got a right monologue there as well.
no, it's great. It's absolutely great. Yeah, but I think particularly, I grew up in rugby culture as well, where there were no weaknesses, particularly physically. And without that physicality, without being physical, what do you have? And as soon as you strip that away, what are you left with? And that's a daunting place to be. I can't can't imagine what that must have felt like.
Yeah, it was one of those. It's hard because I think nowadays mental, if you call it what it is my own journey with mental health is ever evolving. As everyone's is, and I'm not unique. I don't play the trumpet of woe is me, nor do I like it. But I think what it has given me massively, and it's helped me massively through my career and with patients and people you help and teammates and people, it is a massive dose of humbleness. Not that I particularly had an ego before, but it suddenly it could always have been worse, if you know what I mean. Everything, it started when I was young, where it was like, you're going to do this, you're going to build this thing, or you're going to be out doing this job now.
Yeah.
And then that's the end of your sympathy. But then when you're alone, like truly alone, you don't know someone's coming at 5, and you don't know if you're going to be alive tomorrow, or you're in a morphine dream, or and you look down and you've got pipes and things coming out of you. It's a lonely endeavor. I think, even though I was really fortunate, my mates all banded together to see me, and that was everything I would have wanted. But I think what I did, because I really didn't know how that stuff manifests itself upstairs afterwards, because I had no recollection of it. We'd all seen the movies of a bloke running forward, like, is it Platoon, when he gets shot and he goes to his knees and he just gets blown to bits.
He
just keeps running. I just figured that was how it works, but I couldn't run. Couldn't run that way. I was blown to bits. So it was one of those. It humbled me, and it really made me really empathetic. It made me really understand people as well, because I was in a ward full of, frankly, the dead and dying, really. So it made me appreciate people, really, strangely. Yeah, but definitely helped. In the long run.
So you were currently there in your life, and coming back to this email that you sent me, where does Canada come into this?
Yeah, that wonderful place. It was, so I got into adventure filmmaking. So I did through COVID, I did a summer university because I was done with Leeds. So I'm going to go down south to Carmarthen, where I met some of my best friends on this course. It was a course that's partnered with outdoor education. So, and anyone looking at, if you're listening to this, who is half creative or half into outdoor ed, or maybe you're all into outdoor ed and want to explore some creativity, this amalgamation of these courses, because they do some of our courses and we do some of theirs, but the center point is the outdoor stuff. So when they're doing core skills like knot tying and things like that, we would be doing film and camera stuff. And when they're learning about case studies on expeditions, we would be doing film crew stuff. So that's kind of the mirror, if you will. So I went there, sort of a fresh start, really. It felt fantastic. Fresh start, and I set up my first business then when I got there, because I thought, right, this is, because I've never, I think a lot of people in the industry think like the golden age of exploration is done. I think but I grew up on those books. My dad would read me Shackleton and all these sorts of stories, and I've never thought that. I think the world is a huge place, so I always believed there was cool stuff to go and find, and there still is. So when we got there, I set up my own business. I thought I'm gonna still keep doing tree stuff. I thought at the time I could still keep doing trees and stuff like that. And then whenever I do get work in between uni, I'll just put it through my own business. Trying to be the whole self-employed thing, whatever that meant at the time.
Yeah.
And, so yeah, joined there, and then as we went through that course, we went away and did a bunch of stuff. So that was when the outdoor stuff really was honed. So amazing group of instructors on the outdoor ed course there, and the way they taught was very much like, go, you know, like here's the core skill, go. So, you know, I would go in my assignments or my dissertation and stuff, you know, some of my people on my course, the edge of a film course, would, you know, we'd go off and do different things. I would just come absolutely haggard on the weekend because I'd put together a gaggle of people and we'd have gone climbing, and I'd just been like snapping away while we were doing it. So it was the whole thing. It was like every week it was an iteration of plan, film, and execute. And if it wasn't the film part, it was plan, film, and execute a trip or a day out, coast steering and mountain biking and all the things you'd expect from an outdoor ed course. Yeah, and then so we did that, and then as part of it, there's an enterprise module. So you've got to build a business, and that's at the start of the last year. So in my last year, I built my company called Remote Horizon, because I was like, what's it all about? It's about going to remote places and new horizons. So that's what we're going to do. And then I have always been good at if you know, I never want to be the best at anything, but I do want to learn from the people who are best at what they do, if you know what I mean. Like, I've got, you know, like I said, I'm a 70%er really. Like I just want to be good enough to be in the same room as you know, because to me, being in those rooms is what it's all about. It's the luckiest times I've ever been. So I was reaching out to studios and the big leagues with nothing. I was sort of saying, like, you know, can I go be a runner, or can I carry your bags, or can I do this sort of stuff? And it wasn't as simple as what I'm about to say, but through those iterations, I got a call from a friend of mine who's a stunt coordinator for the British Stunt Register. And what I forget to mention is I was doing my own courses through my own work. So I was getting my climbing courses and my rescue courses and my first medic qualifications and stuff like that. And I got a call on I'd driven up from Pembrokeshire on a Thursday, sorry, to come back here, see the parents. And I got a call from him saying, Tom, do you do ropes? And I was like, yes, I do ropes. And he was sort of like, great, there's a job in Margate on Monday that needs your attention. I'm going to give you the producer's number now. She's going to call you in 20 minutes. And I said, okay. And he hung up the phone. And I ran up here and I was like, right. And I started like, ropes. I said, wrote ropes ? Like, what does ropes mean? Like, and I sort of was like, oh God. And then and I started writing you know, and then long story short, this producer rang me and they said, right, Tom, so there's a Vogue, we're shooting a commercial for Vogue magazine, an article for Vogue, so it's like handbags or something like that. And I thought, what has he put me up for here? And he said, so we're shooting at a sea cliff in Margate, and we need the ability to make that cliff safe, and we need the ability to hang a photographer down off the front of it to shoot down. Which nowadays you'd be like, well, I won't use a drone. But anyway, so yeah. I basically said, okay, yeah, I'll be there. And I gave the day rate he told me to give, which was the most money I'd ever seen in my life at the time. And because I didn't know what a budget was or what anything was. And then he was like, right, okay, yeah, no problem. So immediately I went out to all the outdoor shops in V12. I planned out my system from my courses I'd done. I bought like hundreds of meters of rope, and I bought, you know, access harnesses and this sort of thing. It was the most money I'd ever spent in one day in my life, to this day, I think. And I was just like maxing out every credit card I could get, applied for new ones, just to get all this kit to turn up and look professional at this job. So that was me. And then Sunday I booked the hotel. I drove all the way down to Margate on the Sunday, which I didn't realize how far away that was at the time. And then it turned up, and there was about 150 person crew going on. And then the PAs came up to me and they said, "Who are you?" And I said, "I've been told by this amazing mentor of mine to be like, well, tell them you're stunt coordinator." So I said, "Okay, I'm the stunt coordinator." And they said, "Okay, great." So that's the cliff, and it wasn't that high. It was probably like a 20-meter cliff, but it was long, and it was quite sheer to the beach. And then they said, "We're going to be there at 7 p.m." and this was at 6:30 a.m. So then I had 12 hours to work out how to rig an entire cliff for a 100-person crew. And it wound up only 5 people used my rig. It was one of the weirdest jobs ever. But that was basically like proof of concept. So I was like, this exists. And shortly after that, through that last year of uni, I became through his connections, I was the team medic for the stunt register for a while. So I when they would do their fight training, you just watch guys and gals beat each other up. I would just, they're the worst people to medic for as well, because they just want to keep going. So they would come in and be like, "I've broken my nose," and I'd be like, "Okay," and then they'd leave. So it was good. So I'd do that, and then all of that. Sorry, I'm answering this a very long-winded way. In terms of Canada, the idea came about between me and my partner, and we were sort of like, where we'd never been. We went there on a ski trip, in and amongst, and we thought this is like a cool place. And the idea of moving away somewhere was quite daunting. I think as Brits, we're so proud of where we're from that I think sometimes the idea of putting everything on your back and going could be quite, at least for me, it was quite daunting. But I figured that I'd done these X jobs which were unique and awesome, and there's a few more little ones and funny ones in between, but you can imagine that sort of journey there. I need to hone some skills more than anything, because there's the practical, there's the theoretical application of something, and then there's the practical application. And those jobs went really well, but I was breaking my back doing them. I was sort of like, right, this is hard because it's new. So I wanted sort of time on the ground doing something that, if I was going to be a medic, I want to be a good medic, and if I wanted to be on the ropes, I wanted to be good on the ropes, and, to say I could do ropes. But just, it's always been this thing of being competent is what it is. I'm never one, I never want handouts. I've always wanted opportunity. So if I get an opportunity, I wanted to do well. So, and show that I could do it. So it came about, it was a working holiday visa, is like anyone else would go on, but I definitely put the work in working holiday. So it was literally a decision, like, let's give this a go. And then another year of all that rigmarole of film work, sort of doing, I did everything. I was a runner, managed to do a whole week in London and then not get paid for it, which was interesting as a runner. I was a post-production runner, which I didn't even know what post-production was at the time. But I didn't know you needed a runner, but it turns out all you do is make coffee. And I was crap at making coffee.
Oh no! So why did you get paid?
I think they saw it more as a learning opportunity.
Oh, get out of here!
What? Yeah. So I finished, and I was sort of like, "How do you go about invoicing?" And they were like, "Good one."
Oh no!
I was staying with my brother at the time, and he was like, "Yeah, you should have been paid, but there you go.
Yeah.
You pay your dues."
Wow! Never again.
Yeah. Never again. Never again.
And what work were you doing in Canada then?
So Canada was its own animal, really. I just didn't know. I knew my core skills. I knew I could, in the outdoor space, I knew I could be safe. I knew I could look after myself in temperatures. I knew how to look after myself and others. Knew how to navigate. I knew all that. So I knew that initially I sort of went out there with the attitude of like, I could be a lifty and come home in 6 months. But what no one tells you about that process is, and anyone who's done it will understand. And I actually went out there with my partner, but also sort of friends I met along the way from my outdoor ed course. Really cool people. But as they'll know when you get up there, it's very much like you apply for a job in the UK and you have no concept of what that job is until you get there.
Yeah.
So you have everyone calls it like the week of doom when you arrive, because you turn up and you have to do all these really grown-up things at the time. You have to sort of go and you have to sort of set up like a social security number and insurances, and no one's telling you how to do that. You know, there's a roadmap, but there's no one telling you like, oh, it's only open at like 2 o'clock on a Wednesday. And so you have this week of, oh my God, like this is the way I got over that is when I got really drunk with the bout rugby team, actually, but that's the way. I sort of found them in a bar at the end of the week. It was really funny. But so I get in, basically Banff is like the way station for all of these people, Aussies and Brits and Kiwis and other Canadians moving from other parts of Canada to go into the mountains for the winter. So you bump into some people there. But my first job in Canada was I was a snowmaker. Again, I applied for it. It sounded great, you know, because in the job description it was like use heavy machinery, work all around the mountain, which was the big one for me, because my ulterior motive going to Canada was I wanted to work on ski patrol. Because I'd met them when I went to Canada, and then in France I'd see them, and they always looked like the coolest dudes on the planet. Somewhat unobtainable, I thought, but that was kind of like, that'd be cool. But there goes my dog. So I got there and I did snowmaking. So the snowmaking, for those who don't know, is a gut check, really. It's basically like you all around the mountain at different stages. And I worked at Lake Louise. So Lake Louise is I'm going to get this wrong, they're all going to kill me for this, but I think Lake Louise is something like the third biggest snowmaking operation in the world, or something like that, or maybe in the Americas at least. It's got like kilometers, the whole mountain's plumbed with water. I get it. This is a whole world I had to learn, but basically up to the summit of a mountain, I think Louise sits at 2,500 meters, something like that. It's quite high up. There's these pipes. So basically you turn up there, and then they were like, this is snowmaking. And with no snow on the ground, I went over in about August. It was plus 30. And I was like, what, we're learning to make snow, and all you do is walk around and turn on taps and turn them off. And I was like, what have I done here? I was on my own at this point, you know, moved into accommodation and stuff. But it was long days of training. You just like walking up and down this mountain all day long. There's no way to just walk up and down it. And I was just like, well, I'm getting really fit. This is good. Yeah. But I have no idea what this is about, because it's still plus 30 and it was slowly ticking down. And then literally overnight in September, it was like -5. Like, and I was like, and they were like, it's on. And I was like, what's on? And then so you go, it's 12-hour shifts, all on your feet. And there's massive high pressure things at the bottom of the hill, and they pump water up. And the combination of air and water, so there's no chemicals or anything like that. You fire air and water into the air, water and air into the air. And then due to the cold nature, it falls as snow. So you just combine the molecules to make snow.
Wow.
Right? I didn't know that was a thing. In our country, that is unheard of, right?
Yeah. I've seen it out in when they've made artificial ice, right?
Yes.
They just pour water down the cliff, and it does it. Snow. I mean, I was thinking when you say snowmaker, I just thought, what? How? That is phenomenal.
Yeah, the running joke was like trauma maker there, because it's awful. It's like it's one of these things. Is like the mountain generally wouldn't open without them, unless you have a really good snow year. But my God, is it the hardest? One of the hardest things I've done. It basically, you're in a group. I think the teams are of 12. There's a massive like army of you, and we're like the people no one sees, because you work. It's a 12-hour shift. So if you get we had the night shift, which was good, because you'd start at lunchtime and you'd finish at 1 in the morning. But the other crew had the grey shift, so they would start at 1 and then go till 1 in the afternoon. So they had to sleep through the day. So I lucked out there. But basically, it was just drinking from a fire hose. Basically, so you learn to drive snowmobiles up anything. So you learn all the, you know, how to use that to a really high level. And you're surviving. So you do what's called gun runs or gun laps. So the peace bashers will put or the cats, they'll kill me for saying peach bashers, but anyway, the cats will put out these machines higher up the mountain. And I don't know if it's because I was fitter, or maybe I could be alone a bit better or work individually, but I basically was put at the top of the mountain with a friend of mine called Berg, and we had about, I think we had 6 guns on our lap, and they were on a kilometer square, but it was all like waist deep snow. So for 12 hours you just post hole in a circle, like pulling fire hoses full of water and air that are going at 1,000 psi, and like trying to connect them, and then you basically have to walk out into the plume, and when these things, you stand in this plume, and I still remember it, it's called sticky bounce, so the snow, some should stick and some should bounce off, and that's like perfect snow. But basically what it culminates back to an outdoor adventure setting is you're wet in -30.
Ouch.
So you get to learn how to layer and rewarm really, really well.
Yeah.
And nothing bonds people together than like crying together over hot take. And to anyone who ice climbs know what that feels like. But
yeah,
so that was my first job, and then onwards from there. But that was the first job in Canada. Yeah.
So was that as cold as your time fencing in North Wales?
You know what? It was one of those things. It's different. As anyone who's spent time in Scotland or Wales climbing or doing anything like that, wet cold is very different.
Yeah.
Dry cold. But then again, I was wet in dry cold. It was the coldest I've ever been. When you walk out in the morning and your nostrils all freeze, that's when it's like a temperature gauge. It's like, oh yeah, it's cold today.
Oh, it's cold.
you just sort of stick your nose out.
Who needs a thermometer? Yeah. And then, so how many times have you done that then? Did you just do the one season?
That was the one and done. So snowmaking is its own beast, really, because it starts before the hills open and goes to when it's just starting to open fully. So it goes from, it's like a weird micro season of intensity from August to December 1st.
Oh, wow.
So I went out mid-August, got prepped, started work, and then between I put in my package for patrol. So I it wasn't a wing. So beforehand I'd done my wilderness first aid. I'd done my FREC 3, which is a slightly more clinical. I think the Canadians call that, what's called an EMR. So your emergency medical responder. So I'd done those courses and some other ones. In uni, I was fortunate enough to be taught and add on to all of that in sort of trauma and critical bleeds and that sort of stuff. So I was quite squared away in the medical department, albeit I didn't have much ground time. But I had, through incidences we all run into, done first aid various times, working at centres and different places like that. And obviously working as a medic for the stunt register, I sort of nerded out a bit, should we say, to sort of understand it. And I had, I'd done my rope rescue stuff and bits like that. So it wasn't a wing and a prayer, but the weakest part was my skiing, which was quite interesting. And hats off to anyone who's a ski patroller in the Rockies and in the France, or a ski patrol in general. I didn't quite understand how intense of skiing that is. Like I could ski off piste and on piste, anything in France really, without super sending stuff. So I'd never done couloirs, I'd never done anything like that. But I could ski on an off piste at an all right level. And through snowmaking, I was going out and training. And I was skiing down in the dark from the top of the mountain after shift. So following all the peace bashes and
that's going to hone your skills.
Yeah. Really annoyed the cab drivers because you're supposed to leave it pristine, and they turn around, there's massive S-bends down the thing, and it's like, who was that? Ooh, don't know. So put in for ski patrol. There was a slot for 2. That's a really funny story actually, but long story short, there was 2 slots opened up. I think 2 people left the team, because usually the team starts at the start of the season and runs till the end. But there's 2 slots, and myself and a great friend of mine called Will Undershoot, who's now a paramedic out there, got in. So we were just, I'd never met him before. He's a Canadian guy, born and bred, and I got this slot. And that year is still, from what I understand, quite renowned as one of the busiest years they've had. I didn't, there's no inkling to that. It's just, but basically, I got in, I'd interviewed, and there's a ski test. And this ski test was, there's a close friend of mine now. He lives in Canada. He's a ski guide now. Ben Thompson. He was assistant patrol leader, and the patrol leader there. I'll just mention it because they've been such massive influences on my life. They're so amazing people. And this guy and 2, there's Misha and Michaela. Michaela was our big boss, and then Misha and Ben were like the seconds in command at the time. I went on a ski test with Misha and Ben, and that was the most humbling thing I've ever done. So I went up on this lift, and I was with, it was 3 of us. Sorry, there was 3 of us. It was me, Will, and this guy called Aaron, all very good friends now, all on the same chairlift. And it was basically like, who are you? Who are you? The interview's on the chairlift pretty much, and then you go in for the formal one at the end. And you get basically I think if not the first, of the second thing you do is you get off, and they give you different resorts use different things. At Lake Louise, it was bamboo to make the rope lines, but it's a coil of bamboo, 25 bamboo, and that weighs about, call it 10 kg, maybe a bit more, but it's like 8 feet long. And then the first thing they do is they put you on a blue slope and ask you to ski to the bottom with that, like fast, like following someone.
Yeah.
And then you get to the bottom, you load it, you have to ride the lift with it, take it off, take it up another lift, ski down a black with that on. And it could be anything. It could be black moguls, black green. It just depends how mean Ben was feeling at the time. I think he just decided, like let's just see where you can send these people. And then we go up, and then it's the ultimate test. And she goes to the very top. And if luckily we both somewhat knew the mountain, the people being assessed.
Yeah.
But he's just like, follow me. And he goes, and Ben is a phenomenal skier, but he goes wherever he pleases. And he is, and it was, we went into this terrain, because part of the thing is ski patrol, I don't think a lot of people understand, is you have to learn to ski where there is no snow, because there's not always snow all around. So you're slamming your skis out into rocks and trees and this sort of stuff. Like you learn to like climb with your skis on, and you learn your ski craft really well. And Ben took us down this front there called, it's on the side of Grizzly, it's a place called Grizzly Gully, and it was just all shale. It was like snow shale like that, and snow shale. And Misha watched me come around this corner, and I was like, right, I'm actually doing all right. I'm in the ski test. This is the dream job. I'm doing this. And I caught my uphill ski, and it snapped clean off, and it went like off, and I went into this tree. And I didn't know this, but Aaron, who's also a close friend of mine now, on the test below me, also crashed at the same time. And we were like, right, this is the end. Like, it's been good. But apparently what saved me is how quickly I got my ski back and carried on. I said, if I'd have just laid in this tree on a heap, they would have been like, you don't get the job.
Yeah.
But anyway, we completed the test, and that was it. It was just off to the races. You have 2 weeks of probation then, when you're sort of skiing with someone, another patroller doing everything, and that's it. And then you're responding to anything that happens on the hill.
Amazing. Wow. Exciting times. I mean, that
Crazy.
so are you sat there waiting as you would like in a fire station, and you're waiting for a call, and then you just, how does it work?
So we're fortunate enough, we train with fire teams and the ambulance teams. So in Canada, you can have medical teams on a fire service, and you can have a medical team. So basically, we're all big hodgepodge of emergency services, if you will. But we're obviously localized to our ski hill. So Lake Louise is, I'm going to get this wrong because it's just extended as well, but I'm going to go with the last number I remember, which is, I think it's 5,600 acres of terrain. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 4 at the time. There's more now, but there's 4 top stations, so high points on the mountain. And there's give or take 4 of you in each one. I'm not good with maths, but there's that many people to cover all of that terrain, and there's an avalanche team above us as well. So a day in the life, if you will, is so we were living in Canmore at the time. So you would wake up at 5, you get the staff bus into, it's about an hour to the ski hill. You'd be there for 6:30, 6:45, something like that. Meetings at 7. So get your kit on, sit in the meeting, and then so you get divvied up into your teams under your team leaders and stuff, and then you go out, and then you'll have run checks. So there's thousands of runs there, but you basically, within your team, you square off each run. So you're checking for new dangers, checking for hazards, you're building rope lines if you need to, you're building new fences, all in like a really intense hour and a half in the morning. During that time as well is when avalanche control will go out. So you'll have some amazing avalanche professionals out, and then you'll be they'll be bombing, so they'll be up above you, or you'll go with them as them sort of, we call it the safety, but it's not, it's just so, because there's so few of them, you have to go in pairs, and you do get avalanche trained, so you would be spotting them basically and doing the timings for the explosives and things like that. Again, that's a whole other kettle of fish, throwing bombs, but it's and then you do that, and then basically then when the hill starts, you kind of, your day starts, and then you'll have, of your team, you'll be assigned an area, so you can ski as much as you want in and around in this area, and then there'll be a hut time, so there'll be a designated responder for each hour of the day at the top, so there's always a top cover. And then as stuff happens, you filter up to then support medical calls as they happen. And then all day long.
Amazing. I actually had my first experience with we were rescued off a piste in it was in France. My sister-in-law had a really bad knee injury, and I went back on the skidoo, and I just thought that the guy that came, he just came down, he's basically James Bond of the slopes. I said, wow, what a guy. Like, he was just unbelievable, so professional, so slick. And I just came away just going, I mean, what a job that must be.
Yeah, it's the same impression. It's funny because not that I wasn't rescued, but I saw a rescue happen when the first time I ever went to the Alps. Like a helicopter, it was funny, the helicopter was like landed in the middle and this dude topped out, and these dudes arrived on a snowmobile and went off, and I was like, rock stars, like I want to do that.
That's a pinnacle. That is a pinnacle of jobs, I guess. Tom, I want to be respectful of your time, so we have a bit of a tradition on the website whereby we ask the same 3 questions to each guest. So the first question: what piece of advice would you give to yourself 10 years ago?
10 years ago. I had this written down. I think trust the process, even though it's hard to sort of see what the process can be. But ultimately, in our UK outdoor landscape, I would say don't take advice from people who aren't where you want to be. Ultimately, I think I was fortunate enough that I met some rock star mentors, and I'm always very, you do me a favor and I'll do you a solid. It's just any information is like gold dust, but I think we are guilty sometimes of, because I'm a big advocate for knowing what I don't know. I'm not an expert in everything. Always trying to be 1% better really every day, just trying to do something that furthers it. But not everyone has to know everything, and sometimes the people who say they do don't. So I think, just choose your mentors carefully.
Because you alluded to that earlier in the discussion when you said, you want to be the stupidest person in a room, and that's the only way you can learn, isn't it?
I think just, but the key part is the room. Is
Mm,
a lot
choose
of
the room.
people, yeah, a lot of people are scared to put themselves out there to get things wrong.
Mm,
But that's the best stuff.
yeah.
Is that like, if you're going in with the honest integrity that you don't know everything, but you are competent in what you do know, you're not going to do anyone any harm, because if the class of people that you're with, they will look after you, you know. And it's
Mm,
not always like that, you know. I've been in really hairy situations where I don't know what's going on, and I've never done anything like that, and I'm not qualified. If you know, I mean, the first time I ever responded to someone, I remember turning around when they grabbed you and they're like, "Help me!" You're like, "Hang on, oh, like I'm the help."
You're
Yeah,
the,
I'm the guy you
you're the
called.
dude. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it is, don't be scared to put yourself out there. But similarly, like, if you don't get the down check, it's just ask for what you think. Be ready for the down check, but just be willing to be like, well, how can I do better at it? You know, I think we're so, I think nowadays we've all got so shy of getting things wrong. But if you can laugh at yourself, and you genuinely take what you have to take seriously and let go of the rest, you can get a lot done. And but sometimes people feel a need to be infallible, and
Yeah.
I've never had that. I think it's your weaknesses that generally make you who you are, because if you, what you possess as a weakness, someone else will have as a strength. So just, yeah, just picking your, just listen to the right advice from, and don't take it from people who aren't where you want to be.
Yeah. Well said. Well said.
Yeah.
So, question 2: what valuable resource, this could be a book, YouTube channel, piece of equipment, podcast, etc., can you recommend to help others following a similar path?
Sure. As I go off into more sort of medicine and things like that, I would say if you're someone who's minded on technical skill and stuff in the outdoors and things like that, Aldo Kane's got a fantastic book. If you don't know who Aldo Kane is, I think he's a Royal Marine and then now an adventure safety specialist, but lived an amazing life. That's a great book if you're looking for unique pathways, a bit of inspiration. Medically and skills wise, I work with a company now called RedMed, or which is called Rescue Expedition Disaster Medicine. So they're all about building competent medics in different places. So whether you're a ski patroller, you're a heart team member, a paramedic, a firefighter, and things like that, and you want to take your skills to remote and extreme places, I teach on their course as well. So we teach that in different places. So their whole syllabus is amazing. But generally, if you're looking for pure inspiration, I'm really old school. If you haven't read South by Shackleton, about the journey there, that is a fantastic read about resiliency and ultimately just optimism. It's the one thing that's always that I read that book when I was quite young. It was first read to me or introduced to me by my father. And it's the one thing I think anyone will say about me is I'm pretty damn relentlessly positive. So it's carried me, it's done me a lot of favors. But yeah, RedMed, Aldo Kane's book on career path, and then Shackleton South is what I would say.
Is that the second one, the Red Bed, did you say?
RedMed.
Red.
Yeah, so it's RED stands for Rescue Expedition and Disaster Medicine.
Right. Got it.
The courses we run, there's one to Guatemala this year, so we take you to the jungle and do all sorts of jungle medicine for a week. So if you're an ML or so the RedMed is for medical professionals. So if you've got a sort of a wilderness medic qualification or something like that, and you're looking to sort of hone those skills, it's a week of up dry raw expedition stuff. So it's a good time. Yeah. But yeah, just read as much as you can, because I didn't read enough in my early life, I don't think. So
yeah. Cool. And the third and final question: what would you like to see change about the adventure industry?
that is a big question. I think I'm fortunate to see it in a couple of countries. Most of my time is spent in the UK. In the UK, I think we do have a really, really, really good history and standard of mountaineering or climbing, or we're really good at building doctrine and sort of standards and things like that. But it also has its downfall. I think ultimately I would love to see less egos in the industry, really. I think there's such a power that comes with being just having some wanderlust again. I think if you look back at the sort of the arc of British exploration and things like that, they were, you didn't need qualifications to go and get on a ship to go to the Antarctic. You just needed the will to want to go. And don't get me wrong, you need qualifications. Like I do believe in really good training, and I know that's not what I'm getting away from. But I think as mountain professionals, there's a lot more. There's so many idiosyncrasies and tiny ways to go about these careers that don't require you to sort of go ABC. So if you're not going ABC and you run into someone who thinks ABC is the only way, I think, in my experience, it's just those things of being more humble to have. We are very unique in this country. We're very good at what we do, but I think be humble that there's a lot more ways to do it. There's a lot more ways to do it, and get back to some wanderlust.
Love it, and there's no doubt about it. You've shown your humble side on this interview, and I really appreciate it. Oh, definitely. I mean, to have done all of this, the age of 26, I mean, hats off to you, mate. I mean, that is phenomenal.
I appreciate
it. Really.
I appreciate it.
Tom, where can people find out a little bit more about what you're about and get in touch?
Yeah, so at the moment, things are evolving my end. So my Instagram is at Tom Andrew Smith. It's plain Jane as can be. I think it's a big picture of me with a big cheesy grin in a black hoodie.
I don't believe it.
And then from that page, you'll see my business page, which is Remote Horizon. So we do adventure, medical, and safety. That's generally the tagline. So anything that falls under those three main things. And you'll see a bunch of recent projects. And anyone looking to do more stuff medically and stuff like that in the years to come, I'm going to be developing small training courses and CPD days and stuff like that for other young people looking to just get into some nuts and bolts of stuff. RedMed and SOS Medical are the other two. They're all tagged in my Instagram and things like that. I work with them really closely doing all that sort of stuff. But they're all over my stuff, but generally that's me on Instagram is Tom Andrew Smith. If you want any advice or you want to chat, happily.
Great stuff. Well, thanks again, Tom, for your time, and I'm sure we'll be in touch in the future.
Absolutely.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
If you've enjoyed this podcast and want to hear the next one, please subscribe. Please share the podcast with your friends and followers. You can also find the Adventure Pro podcast on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Adventure Pro Pod.